दोस्तों, जीएसटी के इस एपिसोड में अब हम चर्चा करेंगे ट्रांजिशनल प्रोविजंस की। जीएसटी एक्ट के जितने भी प्रावधान हैं वो सब एप्लीकेबल होंगे फ्रॉम द अपॉइंटेड डे, यानी जिस दिन ये लॉ नोटिफाई होके इस कंट्री में लगेगा। लेकिन ट्रांजिशनल प्रोविजंस एक ऐसे प्रोविजंस हैं जिसकी इम्पोर्टेंस इम्प्लीमेंटेशन से पहले के प्रोविजंस के लिए है, और अगर हमने इन प्रोविजंस में अगर कोई फ़ायदा या कोई प्लानिंग हमारे पास अवेलेबल थी और हमने नहीं की, and we lost some credit or we lost some opportunity, then that opportunity or loss is gone once for all. इन प्रोविजंस की सिग्निफिकेंस जीएसटी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के बाद बिल्कुल खत्म हो जाएगी। ये सिर्फ ट्रांजिशनल की ही बात करते हैं। ये प्रोविजन अगर आपको रिवाइज जीएसटी लॉ मॉडल याद हो तो उस टाइम पे सेक्शन 165 to 197 में डील किए गए थे, 33 सेक्शन थे। पर अब जो फाइनल बिल जो लोकसभा से पास हो गया और राज्यसभा में डिबेट हो रहा है, उस बिल के हिसाब से नाउ ऑल दीज सेक्शंस हैव बीन कंसोलिडेटेड इनटू ओनली 4 सेक्शंस। तो ट्रांजिशनल प्रोविजंस अब सिर्फ 4 सेक्शन में कंसोलिडेट कर दिए गए, और वो 4 सेक्शन है सेक्शन 139, 140, 141 एंड 142। 139 सेक्शन डील करता है माइग्रेशन ऑफ एग्जिस्टिंग असेसेस से लिए, 140 डील करता है ट्रांजिशनल अरेंजमेंट फॉर इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट, 141 डील करता है ट्रांजिशनल प्रोविजंस रिलेटिंग टू जॉब वर्क, और 142 मिसलेनियस प्रोविजंस में डील करता है। 33 सेक्शन को 4 सेक्शन में कंसोलिडेट किया गया। इसमें कोई शक नहीं है कि ये सेक्शन बहुत बड़े हैं, इनके सब क्लॉजेज भी बहुत ज़्यादा हैं, बट एनीवे यू विल ट्राई टू सिंप्लीफाई इट एंड ट्राई टू डिस्कस ऑल दीज 4 सेक्शन इन दिस एपिसोड ऑफ जीएसटी। जहाँ तक माइग्रेशन की बात है, अब 30 अप्रैल तक का टाइम दे दिया गया है। एग्जिस्टिंग असेसेस को इसके लिए माइग्रेट करना है। उसके लिए आपका एग्जिस्टिंग रजिस्ट्रेशन नंबर और पैन नंबर होना बहुत ज़रूरी है। उन दोनों के माध्यम से आपको आईडी डिपार्टमेंट से दी जाती है और आप माइग्रेट करते हैं। तो उस माइग्रेशन के बाद आपको एक प्रोविजनल नंबर दे दिया जाता है। देन यू हैव टू सब्जेक्ट टू कंप्लाई विद सर्टेन कंडीशंस एंड यू हैव टू सप्लाई सर्टेन मोर इंफॉर्मेशन। And once that information is being provided, then you have been given a permanent registration number of GST. और अगर आप उन कंडीशंस को पूरा नहीं करते हैं और वो इंफॉर्मेशन जो डिपार्टमेंट ने मांगी है वो नहीं देते हैं, तो आपका वो प्रोविजनल रजिस्ट्रेशन नंबर कैंसिल हो सकता है। यहाँ माइग्रेशन से रिलेटेड आपके दिमाग में कुछ इश्यूज हो सकते हैं। मैं उनको विजुअलाइज करके जो मैं समझता हूँ, जो आपके मन में भ्रांतियाँ हो सकती हैं, उनका मैं निवारण करने की कोशिश करता हूँ। एक मैन्युफैक्चरर है जो एक्साइज में भी रजिस्टर्ड है, और क्योंकि उसका प्रोडक्ट गुड्स की डेफिनेशन में आता है और उस पर वैट भी लगता है, तो वो सेल्स टैक्स में भी रजिस्टर्ड है। तो उनके पास 2 रजिस्ट्रेशन नंबर हैं, एक एक्साइज का और दूसरा सेल्स टैक्स का। तो ये क्वेश्चन आता है कि वेदर दे हैव टू माइग्रेट on both the numbers। ऐसा नहीं है। You have to migrate to the GST using one registration number. It may be either VAT or excise duty. That manufacturer may be registered as a service provider also, because he may be providing annual maintenance service or other services. So even he can use that service tax registration number for the purpose of migration. But migration has to be done only once. Again, I am repeating. If you are registered with various departments and all those taxes are going to be subsumed in GST, then you can migrate only once from one registration number, and rest you need not even look at it. That will be a perfect migration to GST, because ultimately you have to land to the GST only. इसके बाद दोस्तों दूसरा जो सेक्शन है जिसकी मैंने बात की 140, जो ट्रांजिशनल प्रोविजंस रिलेटिंग टू इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट डील करता है। ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है। लेट अस से आप एक वैट के डीलर हैं, आप माल खरीद रहे हैं, बेच रहे हैं, तो जो स्टॉक क्रेडिट आपकी रिटर्न में था, इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट विच यू आर नॉट एबल टू यूटिलाइज, उस इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट का क्या होगा? या मान लीजिए मैं सर्विस प्रोवाइडर हूँ या एक मैन्युफैक्चरर हूँ, मैं सर्विस प्रोवाइड करता हूँ, गुड्स मैन्युफैक्चर करता हूँ, एक्साइज ड्यूटी देता हूँ, तो मेरे रिटर्न्स के अंदर कुछ इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट अनयूटिलाइज पड़ा है। उस अनयूटिलाइज क्रेडिट का क्या होगा? कैन आई क्लेम ए रिफंड फॉर दैट अनयूटिलाइज टैक्स क्रेडिट? Certainly not. There is no provision in GST where you are being permitted to take refund of the unutilized tax credit. But yes, ये प्रोविजन है कि जो आपके रिटर्न के अंदर टैक्स क्रेडिट है, आप उसको माइग्रेट कर सकते हैं। You can carry it forward to the regime of GST where you can use that credit for the payment of discharge of your GST liability. तो ये GST, ये जो क्रेडिट एग्जिस्टिंग लॉ के अंदर है, चाहे वो वैट का क्रेडिट है या सर्विस टैक्स का क्रेडिट है या एक्साइज ड्यूटी का क्रेडिट है, उन सब का क्रेडिट कोई भी वेस्ट नहीं जाएगा। ऑल क्रेडिट शैल बी अवेलेबल टू यू फॉर द पर्पज ऑफ डिस्चार्ज ऑफ योर GST लायबिलिटी। इसके लिए उन्होंने प्रोसीजर ट्रांजिशनल रूल्स में ले आए हैं। यू हैव टू फॉलो दैट प्रोसीजर, you have to file that form within the time prescribed, which is mainly 60 days. वो सारे काम आपको करने हैं, लेकिन आपका क्रेडिट वेस्ट नहीं जाएगा। You can certainly use it for the discharge of your liability under GST law. अब क्योंकि ये एक बार है, आपको ये क्रेडिट लेके जाना है जो आपकी रिटर्न के अंदर है, तो जो रिटर्न आप फाइल करेंगे बिफोर द अपॉइंटेड डे, that return gains lot of importance because जो क्रेडिट उस रिटर्न में होगा वही आपका फॉरवर्ड होगा। इसके लिए you have to be very very careful when you are filing the return for the period ended just before the appointed day to make it sure that you claim all the eligible credit so that nothing is lost to you and the whole credit is get shifted to GST, which is as good as current asset cash, which you can use it for the discharge of your GST liability. दूसरा दोस्तों, कैपिटल गुड्स के जो क्रेडिट हैं, उसके जो प्रावधान हैं सेंट्रल लॉ में डिफरेंट है। अगर हम सेंट्रल लॉ की बात करते हैं तो हम सर्विस टैक्स और एक्साइज की बात कर रहे हैं। यहाँ कैपिटल गुड्स का क्रेडिट, जो एलिजिबल कैपिटल गुड्स हैं, उनका क्रेडिट मिलता है 2 साल में 50% in the year of purchase and 50% in any of the subsequent year. So there is a possibility that you have purchased certain capital asset for which you have claimed the 50% credit in your return. Obviously that 50% which remain unutilized, which you have to claim in the subsequent year, is not even reflected in your returns. What will happen to that credit? 142 sub clause 2 इसी बात को डील करती है। वो ये कहते हैं कि जो क्रेडिट आपकी रिटर्न में नहीं लिया, बट यू आर एंटाइटल्ड टू क्लेम क्रेडिट ऑफ दोज कैपिटल गुड्स, यू कैन सर्टेनली यूज इट एंड यू कैन फाइल द रिक्विजिट फॉर्म एंड द अनयूटिलाइज्ड क्रेडिट ऑफ कैपिटल गुड्स विल आल्सो बी अवेलेबल टू यू एंड विल बी माइग्रेटेड और शिफ्टेड टू द GST regime, where again, like any other credit, that can also be used for the purpose of discharge of your GST liability. अब हम बात करते हैं उस क्रेडिट की जहां मान लीजिए मैं पहले एग्जम्प्टेड गुड्स में डील करता था या ऐसे प्रोडक्ट या सर्विस में डील करता था which were not subject to any existing law. वैट नहीं लगता था, या मान लीजिए मैं सर्विस प्रोवाइड करता था, वो सर्विस एग्जम्प्ट थी, बट अंडर GST बिकॉज वी आर गोइंग टू, द गवर्नमेंट इज गोइंग टू prune most of the exemptions, there is every possibility that the goods or services which were exempted in existing laws, they become taxable under the GST law. Then I am certainly liable to pay tax on the supplies made of those goods and services after the appointed day, that is, after the day when the GST has been implemented in this country, and presently they are talking about 1st July 2017. Now the question comes, whatever stock I was having and I have paid certain taxes, and because those goods and services were exempted under the existing law, so I was not eligible to claim the credit, so I was not claiming the credit. What will happen to those credits or those taxes which I have paid, and now because the goods has become taxable under GST regime, we are entitled to claim the credit of those stocks, which again I'll repeat, is inputs. Inputs contains in semi-finished goods और stocks of finished goods, आपको उसका credit मिल जाएगा. For that, again, you have to follow the procedure, you have to file the requisite declarations, and then their credit will be available. And it is quite logical also, just equitable also. And then the next section talk about when a person is dealing in exempted as well as taxable goods. For example, मैं किराना डीलर हूँ, I am dealing in wheat also, I am dealing in dalda ghee or refined oil also, which are subject to that. But let us assume, or maybe I am a service provider where I am having a taxable services, where I am having exempted services. Being a doctor, my medical services may be exempted. But I am liable to pay service tax on the consultancy which I receive from the pharma company, or I am liable to pay service tax on the rental income which I receive from the letting out of my property. Supposing that these exempted goods and services also becomes taxable, meaning thereby under the existing law I am providing goods and services which are partly taxable, partly exempted, but under GST regime all becomes taxable. So again, the stock which is in relation to the exempted services, I am entitled for the credit and I can claim the credit under this subclause 4 of section 140. Then there may be a situation where input services has been received on or after the appointed day, means after the implementation, but the duty or tax has already been paid under the existing law. So whether I shall be liable to pay tax once again, those goods have been received subsequent to the implementation of GST? No. This subsection of section 140 clearly provides if you have discharged the tax or the duty liability on certain goods and services and they have been received in the period when the GST has already been implemented, then at the time of inward receipt of those goods and services, no tax liability shall be discharged because they have already been subject to tax under the existing law. For example, in service tax, presently you are liable to pay tax even if you receive an advance money, even if the service has not been provided. Let us say a professional has received 50,000 rupees as advance, he has discharged the liability, and now the service has been received after the appointed day, that is after 1st July 2017. Let us assume on that day GST is implemented in this country. Then he is not liable to pay service tax once again on the receipt of those 50,000 because that has already been subject to service tax under the existing law. Then friends, there can be another situation, subsection 6 of 140 deals with that situation, that I may be opting for a composition scheme, or in certain state there is a scheme for lump sum payment of tax and then you are not supposed to pay tax on individual sales. I'll just repeat it. Let us say a state government says you pay 2 crore rupees as sales tax on the sale of jewellery, and then you can deal in the jewellery irrespective of the volume, and then you are not liable to pay sales tax or VAT on each transaction. Similarly, there can be a situation where I have been opting for composition wherein I am paying tax at a reduced rate subject to the condition that I am not entitled for the tax credit under conditions. But under GST, I am not eligible for that composition or that fixed amount scheme, because fixed amount scheme is not at all envisaged under GST. But so long as these composition schemes are concerned, let us say there is a scheme for civil contractor in every state of this country. But the limit, there is no turnover limit also. I may have a limit of 10 crore or 100 crore. I can go and opt for the scheme. But under GST, these composition schemes are restricted to the turnover of 50 lakhs. So obviously, I am not eligible to claim the composition scheme under GST being a civil contractor. Then in that case, I was not entitled to the credit. What will happen to the stock which I was having on the day immediately prior to the appointed day? This subsection provides that you can claim the credit of that tax which was paid by you on the stock, that is inputs contained in semi-finished goods or stock of finished goods. Then subclause 7 of section 140 deals with services received prior to the appointed day by the IST for which the invoice has been received either before or prior to the appointed day. This subsection very clearly provides, irrespective of the fact, when you are receiving the invoice, once there remain an undistributed credit, that can certainly be distributed in GST regime irrespective of the fact whether the invoice was received prior to the appointed day or subsequent to the appointed day. Then friends, I am talking about one provision of Finance Act 1994 which was applicable to service tax. I was entitled to the credit of service tax which for the services which I have received in a particular month. But in case I don't make the payment within 3 months from the date of invoice, I was supposed to reverse the credit. Assuming I received a service in the month of November 16, I didn't pay the tax within 3 months, so I reversed that credit in the month of March 2007. In the meanwhile, GST is being implemented. Now, in August 2007, I made the payment for the value of service and service tax thereon with regard to that transaction for which I have already reversed the credit. This section provides that in the month when you will make the payment, you will be entitled to get the credit also. So that means your credit will not go waste. The service was received prior to the appointed day, that is pre-GST regime. The credit was reversed because I failed to make the payment within stipulated period of 3 months. In GST regime, I am making such payment, and once I am doing that, I am entitled for the credit in the month in which the value of service and service tax has been paid by me. Even though that month is in the GST regime, the credit shall be available in GST regime and can be used for the discharge of GST liability. Friends, now I am coming to the last subsection of section 140, which clearly says that once you have paid the service tax, under the recovery sections, wherein that non-payment, short payment, erroneous refund or excess claim of tax credit was due to fraud, collusion, willful misstatement, suppression of fact, non-compliance of provision with the intent to evade service tax, then that credit shall not be available to you. And with regard to the credit available in subsection 3, 4 and 6, the manner in which it shall be available and the procedure which we have to follow, the government has already come out with the transitional rules, which we will discuss in subsequent episodes of GST. But right now we are concerned with the statutory provisions. So those rules one must go through, look at them, in order to avail the benefit. Once you are eligible for the credit, but you don't follow the procedure which has been prescribed in those rules, then obviously your credit will be lost. And once it is lost, as I told you, it is a total loss to the person concerned. So we have to be very, very cautious with regard to the claim of credit. And here I just want to mention you for which taxes you are entitled for the credit. They have provided an explanation to this section wherein they have said under which section what are the taxes for which the credit can be claimed. So that being a technical subject, and of course once you look at the client credit position, you must look at those explanation also to find out whether you are eligible to claim the credit. And it has further been provided in the transitional rules, in case you claim a credit for which you were not entitled to, then that credit can be claimed in terms of section 73/74 of GST, that is CGST Act. 73 shall apply when that payment of non-payment of tax, short payment of tax, erroneous refund or claim of excess credit was due to other than fraud, collusion, etc., and 74 due to fraud, etc. So in any case, once you claim a credit for which you are not entitled to, or you have claimed an excess credit more than what you have been entitled to, then in terms of those rules, that excess credit can be recovered in terms of section 73 and section 74 of CGST Act 2017. इसके बाद दोस्तों अब हम सेक्शन 141 की बात करेंगे जो डील करता है ट्रांजिशनल प्रोविजंस रिलेटिंग टू जॉब वर्क. दिस सेक्शन has got 4 subsections. Subsection 1 talk about a position when the input has been removed to a job worker before the appointed date and such inputs have been returned back to the office of the principal manufacturer within 6 months from the appointed date, and the commissioner has gotten power to extend that period of 6 months by further 2 months. That means the goods can come back to my office within 8 months if I have sought permission from the commissioner. And if that material comes within the stipulated period of 6 months or the extended period for further 2 months as the case may be, then no tax, no GST shall be leviable. Similarly, the similar provisions are there with regard to semi-finished goods once they have been removed prior to the date for carrying out certain job work, processes, etc. And again, here again the time limit is 6 months and further extension of 2 months by the commissioner, and if that material comes back, then obviously there will be no GST liability. Similarly, subsection 3 deals with the finished goods if they have gone for certain testing, etc., and they also come back within the stipulated period, then there will be no GST liability on that. And if those materials, that is input, semi-finished or finished good, does not come back within the stipulated period, then in that scenario, the tax credit shall be recovered in terms of section 142 subclause 8A. We will deal with that clause when we will deal with the section 142. And of course, the common condition in all the 3 subsections is that these goods must be declared both by the principal and manufacturer in the specified format as laid down in the transitional provisions. Friends, now I am coming to the last section which deals with the transitional provisions, and this section is quite lengthy one, understandable because it deals with number of issues relating to goods, but it is very logical section. Subclause 1 says if you have paid any duty on certain goods and those goods have been given to the supplier after payment of duty and such goods comes back within 6 months, then I should be allowed the credit of excise duty which I have paid under the existing law. That is very logical. Once I have cleared the goods after payment of duty and such goods have been returned or rejected by the buyer and those goods are coming back, obviously once they have come back, it will form part of the further supplies. Once again, the government will be entitled for the GST liability once such goods will be removed. Finally, so the government has rightly pointed out, rightly provided for, that if I have paid the excise duty at the time of removal of goods and such goods are coming back to me within a period of 6 months or further extended period of 8 months, then I will be entitled to claim the refund of the duty which I have paid under the existing law. Subclause 2 deals with the situation when the prices of the goods have been revised upwards. Let us say I have supplied a goods prior to the implementation of GST and the price was fixed at ₹100. Now because of any reason, the price is being revised to ₹110 and I issue the debit note to my client, then that ₹10 shall be subject to GST and GST shall be payable on that revision of prices made by me under the GST regime. There is a similar situation. There can be a situation where the prices have been reduced or renegotiated because of any reason, maybe deficiency of service, deficiency of product, etc. In that case, I can issue the credit note. But in such situation, my liability will get reduced under GST only when the credit availed by the recipient is also reversed by him. And according to me, absolutely just equitable. If the government is willing to reduce your output tax liability, then obviously the person who has claimed the credit on that excess amount must also reverse the tax credit. Then subsection 3 deals with the situation where the refund has been filed before or after the appointed day of GST. That refund shall be dealt in accordance with the provisions of existing law, irrespective of the fact that the claim was filed under the GST regime. Kindly try to appreciate the refund was pertaining to the taxes which were paid under the existing law, so they have to be disposed of under the existing law. Even if there may be a probability if I can file the claim within 6 months, then that claim belongs to the February, and in the meanwhile GST is being implemented. It doesn't make any difference. Because the refund was with regard to the existing levies has to be dealt with the existing provisions of law, and if something is due, then it has to be given to the person concerned in cash only. This is really important to understand. Then friends, we are talking about subsection 5 where subsection 6 where there is a claim for SANVAT. I want to claim certain SANVAT. There has been a dispute with the department. I have filed a claim for and ultimately that SANVAT claim is being allowed to me. If that being so, I'll get the amount in cash. And similarly, if there is a question of recovery of SANVAT, the department has started any proceeding against me for the recovery of SANVAT and the matter is being litigated. If I won, then the matter gets settled because it was a recovery by the department against me. So obviously there is no question of any further proceeding. But once the department wins the case and the amount is recoverable, then I have to pay that tax, and that shall be recovered under GST law as recovery of tax. This is one important change which one must look into, that once it comes to refund part, they say you will be getting the amount in cash, but once it comes to the recovery, then that amount is recoverable under the existing law, under the GST law, if not paid under the existing law. Then subsection 7 deals with appeal, review or reference. Again, because these appeal, review, reference may have been filed after the appointed day of GST because of the time limit available to me for the purpose of filing these appeal, review, etc. But because they have been dealing with the subject of existing law, so they have to be dealt in and they have to be disposed of in terms of the existing law. And again, the same principle has been laid down as we have already discussed. If any amount becomes refundable to the assessee, then that amount shall be given in cash. If something is recoverable, then that should be recovered as a recovery under the GST law. Then we are now moving to subsection 8 of this subsection, this main section of 142, which is in relation to assessment or adjudication. Now we all understand there is a time limit for issuance of a show cause in service tax, but there is no time limit for adjudication. But the only thing which is really important is the period for which the assessment or adjudication is to be carried out. If the assessment or adjudication belongs to the period prior to the GST, then it must be disposed of as per the provisions of existing law, and if any amount of tax, interest, fine or penalty becomes recoverable from that person, it shall be recovered under the GST as recovery of tax. But if something becomes payable to the government, payable to the person concerned whose assessment or adjudication is there, he might have paid excess tax, in that situation, the tax must be refunded back to him in cash only. Then subsection 9 of this section deals with the revision of reward. I have filed the original return. I may have to revise it because of some bona fide errors being made there. There must be some credit which I have forgotten to claim it. So once that return is being revised, and in terms of that, if Senved credit is found to be inadmissible, so obviously that will go waste and no credit shall be available under GST also. But yes, if any amount becomes due to me admissible, then that amount shall be allowed to me. If the amount, if the tax due to me is in excess and something becomes refundable to me by the department, then that money must be refunded in cash. And that's the basic principle. If it is something recoverable from me, then it can be recovered under GST as recovery of tax. Then friends, subsection 10 deals with the situation where goods or services are both supplied in pursuance to a contract which has been entered prior to the implementation of GST, but it was continued during the GST regime also, and I am providing services in GST regime also, then what will be the position of taxability? This is a very important concept, so I'll just like to deal with this concept with an example. Let us say a person has entered into an annual maintenance contract for a camera with Mr. A. Now, that contract is for the financial year 17-18, 1st April 17 to 31st March 18. And the customer, that is the owner of the camera, has given, let us say, 1200 rupees to the company who undertake to maintain that camera. Now, on 1st July, GST comes into picture. The question is, my agreement was entered prior to the law, prior to the implementation of GST, whereas I am supposed to provide the services even during GST regime, that is from July 2017, assuming it comes on that date, to 31st March 2018 also. So it has been provided. Yes, if the consideration has been received in advance in full on which I have discharged the liability, there will be no liability in the GST law. But if I am raising the invoice on monthly basis, then from April, May, June, I have already paid the taxes. They will not be subject to tax under GST. But from the month of July to March 2008, whatever consideration will be received and whatever invoices will be raised during that period, that will certainly be subject to tax. What I am trying to say, kindly try to appreciate, it is a very important thing. It is applicable to all ongoing contracts which has been entered on or after, which has been continued on or after the implementation of GST, but which has been entered on or before the implementation of GST. I am once again repeating, being a very important concept. Finally, I am saying so, if a contract has been entered prior to the implementation of GST and the goods and services are being continued to be supplied in GST regime, the supply of goods and services in GST regime shall be subject to tax, except one situation where the whole amount has already become subject to existing law because the point of taxation has arisen before the GST implementation. To give an example, I am again repeating the same example, camera 1. If I have paid 1200 rupees in advance for the services to be received for the financial year 17-18, no GST shall be payable from July 2017 to March 2018. But if I am raising a monthly invoice, 300 rupees, I have raised the invoice, I have received the payment, discharged the existing taxes. From July onwards for 9 months, I have to pay GST and I will raise the invoices and receive the payment in terms of time of supply prescribed in the GST law. Then friends, I am coming to subsection 11 of this section, which says that no tax shall be payable on services under this Act to the extent the tax was leviable on the said services under service tax law. I have already explained this subsection also, and this subsection talk about the situation which I have already discussed. कि अगर मैंने 1200 रुपये पे पहले ही टैक्स दे दिया है तो जीएसटी में उसके ऊपर कोई टैक्स नहीं लगेगा. Then comes question where I have sent the goods on approval. It is very interesting situation. I have been dealing with the goods. I have sent the goods to Mr. A on approval basis and I have not paid any taxes under the existing law, and those goods are coming back. If those goods come back within the stipulated period prescribed in this subsection, that is 6 months or 8 months as the case may be, then no tax is payable. But if the good does not come back, then the tax has to be paid by the person who has supplied the goods. And in case the goods are coming back after 8 months, then tax shall be payable by the person who is returning the goods. You can say, sir, we don't understand why this kind of taxation. It is very logical proposition if we understand it. Let us say first proposition where I have sent the goods on approval. Of course, I have not paid the tax. I am claiming the credit. That goods have come back to me. Now, those goods will become part of the supply under GST. Once I will supply those goods, I will pay the tax to the government. ITC I have claimed, which is very just and equitable. Fine. Coming to situation 2, where I have sent the goods have not come back to me within 8 months. So it will be treated as a supply from my side. I will be liable to pay the tax because I have already claimed the credit on this. Third situation, once the goods are coming back after 8 months, then the person who will be paying tax to the government, I will be entitled to claim the credit of that tax once I will receive back those goods. So meaning thereby, the government will get the GST, I will claim the credit, so no revenue will go to the government. And once I will dispose of those goods as a matter of fresh supply, then on value addition, I am liable to pay the tax, which is absolutely just, equitable and logical. With these words, I will say that these are the 4 transitional provisions which deals with various subjects. Again, to conclude and to summarize, I will say there are only 4 sections. 139 deals with the migration of assets, 140 deals with the subject of tax credit, 141 deals with job work, and 142 deals with miscellaneous provisions including pending litigation, refund of duty, refund of claim, etc. And the situation if the contract has been entered prior to the GST and they have continued under GST regime, how those ongoing contracts shall be taxed. With these words, I would like to conclude my discussion on these transitional provisions in this episode of GST. I hope you must have found it useful. Keep watching Clear Tax. Thank you. Thanks a lot.